Friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Today we continue on to episode 5 of our Clone Wars history series. So far, the war is still in its infancy. Shortly after the Battle of Geonosis, the Jedi Council deploys Mace Windu and his hand-selected Jedi task force on the planet of Hisrich to uncover what the Separatist forces are up to on that planet. The Jedi would find out that Hisrich would be the first of many worlds occupied by the Separatists for their bountiful natural resources and energy. Today, we continue covering the spread of the crisis, primarily focusing on one of the first worlds to become a major battleground in the growing Clone Wars. Before we begin, if you want to check out the entire series in chronological order, just hit that little button on the top right corner. We have a playlist which includes all of our episodes, including some prequel videos which explains how the Clone Wars started and the events leading up to the Clone Wars. Also, don't forget to subscribe down below, hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of this series. A Republic fleet arrives over the water world of Kamino, no longer a secret to the rest of the world now that the Republic has increased demand for new clone troopers. The clones had proven themselves in their first major battle on Geonosis, but the Separatists greatly outnumber them across the system. In nearby systems, listening posts are created on all possible approaches to Kamino to detect any incoming threats. The once relatively known planet of Kamino is now one of the most heavily fortified worlds outside of the core region of the galaxy. Without access to fresh DNA from Jango Fett after he lost his head on Geonosis, the Kaminoans must figure out a way to preserve his DNA for future generations of clones. The Jedi Council, now in charge of most of the Grand Army of the Republic's day-to-day operations, send Master Shakti to oversee training of new generation of clones. Reaction to the clone troopers in the Republic is mixed. Some see the clones as slaves, others see them as saviors. The fact that they appeared out in the middle of nowhere isn't as widely discussed. The Separatists naturally saw the usage of clones as abhorrent and essentially slavery. The Separatist Council's decision to use droids is far more ethical in their opinion. There are a few Separatist citizens serving in the Separatist Alliance military as officers and leaders. They're seen as heroes by the rest of the Separatist worlds, but already one high-ranking Separatist leader has died in the fighting. The husband of Separatist Senator Mina Bonteri died on the planet of Argonar, defending a new base from the Republic. While most worlds have decided whether they want to remain or exit the Republic, some worlds are still undecided and have both pro-Republic factions and also pro-Separatist factions. This oftentimes led to civil war. Over 1,000 worlds declare neutrality in the conflict. This coalition is led by the Mandalorians. Meanwhile, the Confederacy of Independent Systems is working hard to censor any negative news about the Separatist droid army, about their war crimes, or exploitation of neutral systems. Simultaneously, they're also pumping propaganda into the Republic and neutral worlds about how terrible the clone army is. Leading the chaos are Dooku's two new lieutenants, the cyborg General Grievous and Dathmari ex-Jedi Asajj Ventress. From a grand strategic level, Count Dooku understands that the core regions of the Republic are net importers of raw materials, energy, and resources. So if he's able to cut off the hyperspace lanes to the Outer Rim, he can win the war. Gaining control of the hyperspace lanes would also allow the Confederacy to prevent Republic forces from retaking Outer Rim worlds that have joined the Confederacy. The Hutts and their territory lie in the middle of it all, and the Separatists must win their favor and keep the Republic from negotiating their own treaty with the Hutts. In order to turn the negotiations in his favor, Dooku concocts a devious plan to kidnap the child of Hutt leader Jabba and frame it on the Jedi. Meanwhile, Count Dooku enlists the help of Zero, the nephew of Jabba, who has his own motivation to become the head of the Hutt Council. But in order for the kidnap plan to work, Dooku decides to create a diversion by invading the tactically important and resource-rich world of Christophsis. Republic Senator Bail Organa was already involved in a relief mission on the planet. Organa was Alderaanian, a people known for their culture of giving and charity. Organa had started the Alderaanian Refugee Conference after the war had displaced millions of people in the Outer Rim. The front lines of the Clone Wars were still quite fluid at this time as new fronts began opening every day. Count Dooku had sent two of his best military leaders, Admiral Trench and General Worm Loathsome, basically a giant spider and a boar, to press the small Republic garrison there. Surrounded and under heavy siege and blockade, Senator Organa called the Republic Navy for help. Admiral Wolf Yularen and General Anakin Skywalker receive the call from Organa on board their Venator-class Star Destroyer and start creating a plan to break through Admiral Trench's blockade and deliver much-needed supplies to the besieged clones on the surface of the planet. Initial probes against the Separatist blockade proved to be unsuccessful. The Republic fleet was greatly outnumbered. Admiral Trench had over 30 ships in his fleet, and the command ship, the Invincible, a 2-kilometer-long Providence dreadnought in particular, was giving the Republic a massive headache. Even if Anakin's Venator-class Star Destroyers are able to stop Trench, the transport ships full of relief supplies that they are escorting will still be vulnerable to enemy fire. When General Obi-Wan Kenobi arrives in system, he orders Anakin and the rest of the Republic forces to withdraw behind the moon of Christophsis. While recouping from their last assault, Anakin visits his master's ship and finds out that Obi-Wan Kenobi has brought a secret stealth ship to the battle. This vessel not only cloaked electronic and heat signatures, but also was invisible to the naked eye. Obi-Wan's idea was to use this ship to transport much-needed aid and ammunition to Republic troops on the surface. Meanwhile, Admiral Wolf Yularen is researching the Separatist forces. He had recognized the symbol on the enemy fleet as that of Admiral Trench. Yularen had fought against Trench during the Battle of Malastare in a conflict between the Corporate Sector and Galactic Republic. Trench's ship in the battle had been destroyed, and the Spider-Man had been presumed to be dead, although he had taken down a good chunk of the Republic judicial fleet as well. Yularen volunteers to accompany Anakin on his stealth mission. His prior experience with Trench gave him a better understanding of the enemy. Trench launches another wave of bombers against Organa's position on the planet, creating more urgency. Anakin, using the cloaked stealth ship, manages to bypass the blockade. Although he's told by Obi-Wan Kenobi not to attack anyone, the young Jedi can't pass on the opportunity to take a shot at Trench. Anakin had only just recently gotten married to Padme and at the same time reached the rank of Jedi Knight. Apparently, because of high casualties on Geonosis, they had loosened the standards of promotion. Technically, foolishly running into your enemy's lightning attack and then getting your hand cut off shortly after would be considered a step back in most people's personal development. But I guess the Jedi Council had relaxed their standards at the time, and they believed in the whole, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger because robot arms are better approach. I think back in the day, the Jedi Council would have just looked at Anakin's failure and then stripped him of his field role and assigned him to the Agricultural Corps or something less intensive. And then, he would spend the rest of his life talking to Force-sensitive plants about soil nutrient levels. Anyway, Anakin decides to take the initiative and attacks Trench's ship with a barrage of proton torpedoes, which simultaneously decloaks their own stealth ship. But Trench boosts the ship's deflecting shields at the last minute, which blocks most of the weapon's blasts. Trench then launches his own counterattack with a barrage of missiles. Anakin manages to cloak the ship just in time, while simultaneously redirecting Trench's own missiles back towards him, destroying the Spider's ship. With their command ship destroyed, the Separatist blockade is severely weakened and in panic mode. The Republic forces take advantage of this and engage, picking the Confederacy ships apart. Anakin delivers supplies to the surface, stabilizing the situation for the Republic on the ground. Although the Republic has just won a victory in orbit, the battle for Christophsis is just starting. As Republic ships begin ferrying supplies and reinforcements to the surface, clone reinforcements establish a base on the planet and continue to engage troops led by Separatist General Worm Loathsome and Dooku's personal emissary, Asajj Ventress. Anakin and Obi-Wan Kenobi head to the surface. The fight for the capital of Caledonia is in full swing. Unbeknownst to the Republic forces, a clone trooper had been turned into a Separatist spy by Asajj Ventress and was now feeding the enemy forces tactical information. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin and a small contingent of clones had set up an ambush against a droid armored column in a pair of high-rises. But before they could spring their trap, they were ambushed by Separatist battle droids in the confined space of the buildings they were hiding in. The small force does manage to escape from the roof on a gunship, but Anakin and Obi-Wan Kenobi come to the conclusion that the droids had already somehow known about the ambush and that there was most likely a mole amongst their ranks. This was kind of surprising because clones were perceived as extremely loyal. Besides, any betrayal against the Republic was a betrayal of their brothers, which was just unthinkable at the time. The two Jedi decide to go behind enemy lines to find the source of the leak. Meanwhile, Captain Rex and Commander Cody trace a non-communication signal to the barracks of Sergeant Slick's platoon. There they interrogate the men in the platoon, and it's revealed that the sergeant was actually the traitor. Exposed, Slick attempts to escape the base and even blows up preset charges that take out most of the clones' gunships and armor. Meanwhile, Anakin and Obi-Wan Kenobi head deeper into Separatist territory and find themselves dueling Asajj Ventress. During the fight, they find out that the Separatists had been amassing a huge army that they would use to overwhelm the clone garrison on the planet. By the time the two Jedi arrive back to the Republic's command post, the clones had caught Sergeant Slick. The Jedi don't really have time to contemplate what this betrayal means for the entire army because a massive droid is heading towards them. Slick's betrayal would go on to show us that the clones' genetic engineering was not as perfect as the Kaminoans wanted it to be. The terrible losses on Geonosis was just the beginning of the clones' awakening to their reality. The Republic would quickly carry out a cover-up of Slick's betrayal and the motivation behind his betrayal. Slick had claimed the Jedi were using the clones as slaves and had been ultimately lured by money by Asajj Ventress. The Jedi were afraid that if this story spread amongst the ranks, they could potentially have large-scale desertion and mutiny. Very few Jedi and Republic leaders really understood what the clones were like. A lot of them saw them actually as organic machines, no better than droids. But the opposite was true. These were very independent individuals. It also should be noted how casually Anakin is able to dismiss Sergeant Slick's reasoning for his betrayal. We've seen time and time again that Anakin has come out harshly against slavery. After all, he was a slave himself at one time. I don't really understand how he doesn't see any similarities between his own childhood and the current servitude of the clones. In our next episode, the Separatist ground forces carry out a huge counterattack in an attempt to dislodge Republic forces on the world. Count Dooku would continue to start conflicts in the Outer Rim, forcing the Jedi to further spread out their forces, taking them away from their more traditional peacekeeping role. Meanwhile, he's still carrying out his plan to kidnap Jabba the Hutt's son. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Again, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of our series. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.